got our first batch of scripted shows for 2021. We're going to talk about Mr. Mayor on NBC. Fox has Call Me Kat and The Great North. We've got Coyote on CBS All Access, and a sort of documentary-esque series on Netflix called The History of Swear Words, hosted by Nicolas Cage. Let's talk TV. Hey everybody, Dan here, and this is TV News and Reviews. Welcome to the show for this week. Getting a strong start into 2021 with already, this is my second entry in the TV News and Reviews episodes for the year. We did a game show special a few days ago, but now we're going to talk about all the new scripted shows that are on television that have premiered in the last week or so. If you are new to the channel, though, please consider subscribing below. I'd love to have you on board. We are approaching 700 subscribers, so that is very cool. I would love if you were one of them. Before we get to the reviews, though, we always talk a little bit of news, and there really isn't too much going on with, between the holidays and Hollywood sort of being shut down right now still for COVID restrictions. There's not a ton going on, but a couple of things I saw about broadcast networks. One is about pilot season. So pilots from last year basically all got shut down when COVID hit in March before they got to actually film them. Some were filmed partially, and some were just script ideas that were, okay, we're going to film this in a couple of weeks, and then got shut down. The only pilot that ended up actually getting completed before COVID shut down was the Chuck Lorre show Be Positive on CBS, and that did premiere in the fall. But everything else is still up in the air. A lot of the things from pilot season last year are still up in the air. Are they going to be on at some point this spring, this summer, or will they be pushed to the fall of 2021? And then that brings up a second question, which is, what about the new pilot season? Is it going to exist? Are we going to have new pilots, or are networks just going to stick with what they already had from a year ago? I think there probably will be some sort of mix of both, but they've got contracts with a lot of these pilots. They've got commitments from some, and script orders for others, and actual, like Mr. Mayor, for example, they had a series order. Mr. Mayor didn't even really get a traditional pilot that we're going to review this week. It just sort of got a series commitment, so they started filming immediately. I think this COVID thing will change how pilot season works kind of going forward, because I think they're going to be taking pilots sort of year-round at this point, because, I don't know, the traditional sort of fall season didn't really exist this year as it usually does. I mean, yeah, some shows that, are long-time shows like The Conners or Blackish or The Goldbergs, to name a few on ABC, were able to go back into production pretty quickly when COVID bans were lifted. But then new series were sort of left in the dust still, because they weren't going to spend the money if it could possibly get shut down again, after a few days or whatever. So I don't know. A lot of questions with pilot season and how it's going to work for the coming year, for sure. But one other thing I saw about broadcast networks this week that I thought was very interesting is that this awards season, the Golden Globes and the Emmys, may be looking to broadcast networks for the first time in a few years. Last year, I think it was, I forget whether it was the Globes or the Emmys. It might have even been both. But no, you know what? I think it was the Globes, because I think the Emmys did nominate at least Ted Danson for The Good Place, and maybe The Good Place as a show, I forget. But broadcast networks, for the most part, have been pretty much out of that entire conversation lately. It's always been, streamers and HBO and all that kind of stuff the last 3-4 years. This Is Us and Blackish, I feel like, are the last two network shows, and I guess to a smaller extent The Good Place, that have really broken through in a big way at the awards from major networks. As a result of the COVID stuff, all of the streamer content, that they put out in 2020, most of it was recorded way before COVID, whereas the broadcast networks have had the chance to kind of work the COVID storylines into their late 2020 products. So we saw a lot of fall premieres from some of those shows I mentioned. And then, some dramas as well. Grey's Anatomy obviously, gave Meredith Grey COVID, and she's been, I guess, secluded on some island or something. I don't watch the show, but I kind of read about it. But, that's a big storyline. The Good Doctor has brought COVID into their storylines. 911 has brought COVID into the storyline. So we may see a big uptick this year on the broadcast networks, which, probably won't bring more eyeballs to the shows, but, it is certainly a prestige thing to say, well, we won the Emmy for, whatever, Best Actor or Best, drama show, or what have you. So, I don't know, that could be something interesting. We should get Golden Globe announcements in the next few weeks, because usually it airs at the end of January. That's been pushed back to the end of February for this year, obviously, because of everything being shut down. But we should still get nominees within the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks for the Golden Globes. The other news is the Sex and the City reboot is officially happening. HBO dropped the teaser trailer for that, or actually, I guess Sarah Jessica Parker did specifically. But I think this is going to be on HBO Max instead of HBO proper, but no time frame has been created for this. But if you haven't heard, the big news sort of surrounding this is that Kim Cattrall, who played Samantha, will be absent. For me, she was definitely one of the best on the series. I am a Cynthia Nixon fan myself, so of the 4 of them, I would say she was probably my favorite. Although, look, they all had good qualities, but I would say Samantha was probably the funniest, and certainly the most promiscuous, so the whole, Sex in the City thing really more applied to her than anybody else. And obviously, she's had a lot of tiffs with the cast over the past few years. She's the reason they didn't make Sex and the City 3 in 2017, which, dude, the second Sex and the City movie was so bad. The first one was good and very much in line with the series. Second one, though, very bad and, way too long. So I was fine with them not doing a third one. I have mixed feelings about the reboot. I will watch it. It's probably going to be at least kind of good. Although at the same time, I don't know. I felt part of the reason the second movie was so bad is that the first movie kind of put a pin on the entire series. It was a great sort of long finale, if you want to call it that. So I don't know where we're going to be with this new series, but look, HBO Max is really dipping into the Warner Brothers well to bring back a lot of their recent hits. They're going to have a Gossip Girl revival, a Pretty Little Liars. I don't know if it's a reboot or if it's a spin-off, but there's something in the Pretty Little Liars world that they're going to be doing on HBO Max sometime this year. So we'll see. I will let you guys know when a date is announced and how many episodes we can expect. But for now, yes, the Sex and the City reboot is happening probably at some point this year. And everybody, I guess, will be a part of it except for Kim Cattrall, at least of the main 4. I don't know who else, from the show might be in it. But, all right, well, let's get now into the reviews, shall we? So we're going to start with a bunch of the broadcast shows, specifically broadcast comedies. So NBC aired a double dose of Mr. Mayor on Thursday, the first 2 episodes, and this is the new Ted Danson show from the creators of 30 Rock and Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt, Tina Fey, and Robert Carlock. I'm always a fan of their stuff, and a really big Ted Danson fan as well, and that goes back to the Cheers days, of course. And actually, somebody had mentioned something to me that I hadn't really thought of, but now with Mr. Mayor, if this becomes a moderate success here, Ted Danson will have had a hit show on TV for every decade for the last 5 decades, because, of course, 80s was Cheers, and that went into 93, so, you could really consider Cheers both eras there, both decades, and then 2000s, of course, was Becker, long-running show on CBS, and then The Good Place in the 2010s. So now, if Mr. Mayor catches on, we'll have another Ted Danson, a huge success, and so he plays Neil Bremer in this show, and he's basically a retired, wealthy businessman whose daughter is sort of looking down on him and being like, dude, you do nothing all day, you're lazy. So she decides to run herself for class president to kind of make herself feel good, whatever. And inspired by that, he decides to run for mayor and actually gets it. He runs for all the wrong reasons, but he ends up in the position and doesn't really know what to do. So he gets one of his staunch opponents, the Holly Hunter character. What is her name? Arpy, I think, or Arpy Meskimen, who is he makes her the deputy mayor of Los Angeles, basically because she has more experience than he does, and she can bring something to the table and sort of keep your enemies close, kind of thing. And we also see in this show Bobby Moynihan playing Jaden, who's Neil's communications director. Kind of an idiot, sort of the, we saw actually several people like this in the TV show Veep, but, he's sort of maybe the Jonah, I guess, of the bunch. And then Vella Lovell, who plays Michaela Shaw, who was on Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. Great show, and she played a great character on that. It was nice to see her in this as well. So the first two episodes basically take us through. He's already elected in the first episode, but we see, that he's clearly ill-equipped to do this, and so that's when he hires on Holly Hunter. And then in the second episode, sort of a day in the life kind of thing, of how busy he is and how he has to do such stupid kind of stuff, ribbon cutting here and a photo op there and whatever. Meanwhile, Holly Hunter's character is sort of showing the ropes to the Lovell character, Michaela Shaw. And all the while, Bobby Moynihan kind of, bumbling around. So, I think this show has potential, but I certainly don't think it is a strong pilot like 30 Rock was. Not many shows can have such a great first couple episodes as 30 Rock. But look, I'm willing to give this team a chance because Kimmy Schmidt and 30 Rock, have never let me down. And Ted Danson has rarely let me down, too. I mean, yes, he's had some stumbles in his career with some of his movies, but even his, one-season TV shows, I've enjoyed. He played a therapist in one about 12 years ago called Help Me, Help You that I thought was really funny. That only lasted a year. So I'm willing to give this show a chance, but it's certainly not quite there yet. It's got a lot of the same type of humor as 30 Rock, a lot of sort of randomness, and much like 30 Rock and Kimmy Schmidt, it exists in the real world, but sort of a demented version of it. Maybe not to the extreme of Kimmy Schmidt, but more to the 30 Rock nature, where it's a lot of things would never really happen in the real world, but they sort of stretch the boundaries of what is an acceptable reality, but it does take place sort of in the real enough world that it's relatable, and I do like that about it. In terms of the jokes, I think they're definitely hit or miss. If this show is going for political satire, they're not there at all. I mean, it's very, very sort of gentle humor in the political satire world, so it's nothing like Veep, even though I feel like they're sort of trying to make those types of references in the ad campaigns and stuff, because, look, Veep was a very beloved show, but I think they're going more for character humor than they are political humor. And because we don't quite know these characters yet, it's not quite there. So it just doesn't all come together. But, the same could be said for a lot of shows that are now classic. In the recent history, Parks and Recreation can certainly, be part of that lineup. And more classic, Cheers itself. And Seinfeld, for example, those first few episodes and maybe even the first season was just not all that good. But look, I think the writing is going to be there once we get to know these characters a little better, and it does have the quick, sharp humor of 30 Rock. Just from a political standpoint, if you're expecting some Daily Show type political commentary, it's not here. This is not the show for it. And to be honest, I think that's actually a smart way to go, because I feel like the country's very, very divided right now, and so I don't think you want to go too political with your sitcoms right now. Another thing that's interesting is, so this show, because it was sent straight to series and didn't do a traditional pilot, they filmed actually several episodes before the shutdown in March. So they went almost like 9 months between filming episodes for the same season. So I saw an interview with Bobby Moynihan yesterday that he said they actually refilmed a few of the things from that first episode to throw in a couple of COVID things, so like, okay, this is in the real world, like we're taking place, in a COVID world, and that sort of thing. And maybe for continuity's sake, if maybe one or two of the actors gained a little weight in the pandemic or something. But I didn't notice while I was watching it, but it was interesting to hear that, because I thought that they filmed at least a few of them a long time ago, and so yeah, in fact they did. So I'm going to leave Mr. Mayor with a B minus. It's certainly not there yet, but I can sense some potential. I enjoy the few characters that we've met so far, and look, Ted Danson is always doing his A game. So he, of course, is great. And Holly Hunter, too. I mean, I haven't seen her on TV too much, but of course her movie career, she always gives her all, and she does it here again. So I will leave it with a B minus for now. Let's go over to Fox then for the next two shows. They have two new comedy shows. One is live action in front of a studio audience, or at least will be, I guess, once the pandemic is over. And then the other one is animated from the creators of Bob's Burgers. So we're going to talk about the live action one first. That is Call Me Kat. This is Mayim Bialik, of course, hot off her Big Bang Theory run. And this is based on the British sitcom Miranda, which is a huge success over there. I think it's over now, but it ran for several years. And it stars Mayim Bialik as the owner of a cat cafe named Kat, and she's a 39-year-old single woman struggling to sort of get relationship advice from her mom and run the cafe and feel like she is a successful woman, even though she is, kind of lonely in this world. Swoosie Kurtz plays the mom, and we also see Leslie Jordan here as Phil, who is a recently divorced gay guy who works as a baker at Kat's Cafe. And we also have a few other people that you may recognize. Kyla Pratt works at the cafe as well. And then Cheyenne Jackson, who played... he's actually a guy. When I hear Cheyenne, I think of a woman's name. But and I wasn't quite sure who he was, but I thought I had seen him before. And sure enough, yes, he has done a few different things, including a big run on 30 Rock. He was in like half a dozen or so episodes as Danny on 30 Rock, and he also had runs on Glee and some other shows. So we've seen him around, and he's potential love interest here for Kat, somebody who she knew in college and was really, had the hots for him. He's sort of oblivious to that, but just in these first two episodes, we see them sort of discovering, okay, maybe there is some sparks there, we're not sure, we'll try and figure it out. So a few things. Right away, the breaking of the fourth wall. Now, this is something that the Miranda show did, perfectly. It sort of redefined a lot of things in that realm for television. And it's too present, I think, here in Call Me Kat. It's almost like every third sentence the cat speaks is directly to us, the audience, in camera. It gets very old. And also... it's these throwaway sort of one-liners usually, and a lot of them just aren't funny, to be honest. And then you've got the idea that she is, and they say this in the promos too, oh, you're a 39-year-old, single mom, da-da-da-da. 39, my foot, you can stretch the truth a little bit on a TV show, but Mayim Bialik is almost, in her late 40s here. I'm 43, and she's older than me by a few years. I think she's 46 or 47. So to pretend that she's 39, I don't know. But then you've got Leslie Jordan, who is basically playing the exact same character that he played 2 years ago on The Cool Kids, also on Fox with Vicki Lawrence and David Alan Grier. And, which is sort of a take on the Beverly Leslie character on Will and Grace. I mean, obviously that was exaggerated because Will and Grace's world is kind of exaggerated. But, it's been sort of the same character for him now over the course of several sitcoms. So, I like him. He's funny, but he didn't bring anything new to the table here. Swoosie Kurtz is trying her best, and I usually like her, but... they're just, the writers of this show are just not giving us good material for the most part. Now, there are a couple things I did like about this show. One thing is, I do actually appreciate that they are sort of, giving us these ideas at the end of each episode so far that, her life is satisfying. And yes, she's trying to date guys and stuff, but if she doesn't find the right one, essentially, she will be happy with who she is and her life and her cats and all of that. And that it's not sad and lonely. And, to be honest, I actually appreciated that message. I mean, I'm a 43-year-old dude, and I live with my cats, and I have a roommate, and it's like, I'm definitely lonely sometimes, but I don't think of my life as being, bad or that I'm a loser or something. So I appreciate that a TV show can give us the sort of sense that, even if you're about 40 and don't have a mate, it's okay. Your life will not be over. It can still be fulfilling. So I did appreciate that. And I did laugh sometimes, just not typically at the asides to the audience. But the show had a few jokes that I enjoyed. And certainly I like the concept, woman running a cat cafe. That's fine. Not everybody likes cats, I guess, but I sure do. But through it all, I'm not actually sure how much I like Mayim Bialik as a comedic actress. I think she's a very interesting person. I enjoy watching her interviews. She's obviously brilliant. She has a doctorate. I mean, she is a great person to talk to. But is she a funny person? I still, after 3 shows, haven't figured it out. On Blossom, she was like almost the straight person because, Six was funny, or Joey Lawrence was funny, or the dad even was funny. But, Blossom was okay, but she was more the straight character. And then Big Bang Theory, I sort of stopped watching around season 4 when all the episodes became the same. So I've only actually seen a handful of episodes with Amy Fowler. What was her name? Amy Farrah Fowler or whatever. So I don't know. I'm a bit torn on how I feel as Mayim Bialik's comedic persona. I don't know if this show does have potential. Like Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure. I'm not going to grade it that much lower. It is a full letter grade lower. I'm going to leave Call Me Kat with a C-. But I'm not sure. Like Mr. Mayor, I can see the potential of it getting better once we know the characters. This, I'm not sure. I think, whereas Mr. Mayor, I could see getting a B+ eventually, or an A- or something if it gets really good. I don't think Call Me Kat will probably get out of that C- range. So, take that for what it is. Other than Call Me Kat, Fox has The Great North, and we saw one premiere episode, like a preview episode, a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know when the new episodes will start airing for real. So I've only seen one of these because that's all that's aired. But I believe it will be on Sunday night as part of their animation lineup with The Simpsons and Bob's Burgers and Family Guy. And I guess Bless the Hearts and Duncanville. I mean, they've really been hammering out the animated series as of late. And this is from several of the Bob's Burgers people, including Lauren Bouchard. And it's also from the Molyneux sisters, who Wendy and Lizzie, who have been writing on Bob's Burgers since 2012. And they didn't, create that show like Lauren Bouchard did, but they obviously have been a part of that show for a long, long time. And I just learned that they will be writing the screenplay for Deadpool 3. So obviously they've got some comedic chops, and let's see if it translates to the animated small screen. So it takes place in Alaska, as you might think, with the name The Great North. And a single dad here, Beef Tobin, who is voiced by the great Nick Offerman, is basically trying to keep his kids close together, while sort of, trying to be a tough guy and talking about the loss of their mother, where he tells everybody the mother died. But in the first episode, we find out that all the kids know that that's a big lie. She actually just ran off. And so, to spare, I guess, her from being whatever, hated by the kids, he said that she died and whatever. So that sort of is something that's explored right here already in the first episode. But you've got Jenny Slate here, who always does great voice work as Judy, the only daughter of the family. Then you've got Will Forte, who is Wolf Tobin, one of the sons. And then you've got Paul Rust as well, who is the middle son, who is openly gay. And then there's a little son as well, voiced by somebody I'm not familiar with, Aparna Nachariya. But you've also got Alanis Morissette here, voicing herself, Judy's imaginary friend, Alanis Morissette. We see her sort of talking to her as a figment in the clouds, but it is the great Alanis Morissette. So, look, if you couldn't already tell from the Bob's Burgers correlation, hopefully the description with the, the imaginary Alanis Morissette friend will fill you in that this is a very offbeat show in the same vein as Bob's Burgers. But at its heart, like that show, I think this will be a lot about family and, keeping the family together and seeing them through tumultuous situations as they're growing up and, being exposed to different things and what have you. Judy's got her first job at the mall. Her boss is, of course, voiced by Megan Mullally, Nick Offerman's wife. I love whenever they do anything together, any project. So I always appreciate that. I think this is a funny show. I really think here's another one where, okay, maybe it doesn't get hit out of the park immediately, but neither did Bob's Burgers. Bob's Burgers took me a few episodes before I really was like, all right, I see what everybody's talking about. Because I started watching it maybe in season 4, and I started from the beginning, but like everybody was already really into it, and after that first episode, I was like, I'm not sure I get the hype. But then, I fell in love with the characters. I think The Great North is going to depend on a lot of that, but what I really liked about it is the characters are all fairly developed already. Like, just in that pilot, we know quite a bit, about each one of them and how they function. Now, having the lead character named Beef, I think, is a little bit annoying. That's too, okay, what's the stupidest name we could give a person? So I think that's a little annoying. Like, one of the things that makes Bob's Burgers, I think, so relatable is that his whole family does seem sort of, normal in kind of a crazy world, and here, I don't know, I guess people seem normal, but when you have somebody named Beef, I don't know. But this show is funny. It's, animated in a similar style to Bob's Burgers and actually most of the recent Fox shows. But it's better, for sure, than Bless the Hearts and Duncanville, 2 shows I gave pretty poor grades to last year. Can this be in the, up to the standards of Bob's Burgers someday? Maybe, I don't know. But for a first episode, I thought it was pretty solid. I certainly laughed, and just the general topic of the episode. Judy goes and gets a job, and Beef is not really having it. He doesn't want her to work. He doesn't want her to be a part of society. They're sort of a an off the grid type family, or at least Beef would like them to be. So I think that dynamic is kind of interesting too. So I think this is an enjoyable show. I look forward to whenever it does return to the Fox Sunday schedule for episode 2 and beyond that. I'm going to leave The Great North with a B+. All right, so up next we're going to talk about on CBS All Access, Coyote. Now this is an interesting show because it was originally slated for Paramount Network when they were still doing scripted shows. About 4 months ago, they decided to get out of that game, and so they shuffled a bunch of their remaining shows to other platforms. And they're going to keep a couple of them that have already aired, but new shows they're not going to add to their slate. So they shuffled this off to CBS All Access, which makes perfect sense because that's going to become Paramount Plus at some point in early 2021. We don't know when, but it's going to be rebranded as Paramount Plus, so why not give it a showcase over there? But it was originally commissioned for 10 episodes, and only 6 were completed when COVID shut things down. So CBS All Access has put the 6 on, and I can't figure out, I read a couple of different articles about this, and I can't figure out whether or not that's it. We're just going to get these 6 for the first season, and then we'll get a second season, or at some point if they're going to give us little droplets of the other episodes, and we will have 10 for this first season. I don't really know. But either way, I watched the first 2. The reason I'm not sure is because CBS All Access rarely just puts all of the shows on at once, all of the episodes. They usually will do them one every week. They do that with Star Trek and The Good Wife and really all the Star Trek shows, and some of their other shows as well. But maybe No Activity they drop all at once. I don't know. So I guess a couple of shows they do all at once, and so this may be one of them. Or we'll get more, I don't know. And I don't know if episode 6 ends on some sort of cliffhanger or not, because they were expecting to film 4 more episodes for the season. Unsure. But anyway, it stars Michael Chiklis, of course, you know him from The Shield and The Commish. And basically, he is a Border Patrol agent who is about to retire. Ben Clemens is his name, and after 32 years, he's finally, going to hang it up. But on his last day of service, he notices an underground bunker, basically, going to Mexico, coming up in a bathroom in California. Or no, I'm sorry, are they in California or Texas? I forget. I guess maybe they're in... you know what, that's a good question. I don't know. Coyote, Texas, or maybe it's Arizona. I honestly don't know what state they're supposed to be in, to be completely honest. I don't think it's ever really a big part of the plot. I was thinking California, but maybe I'm wrong. Anyway, through some incidents that happen, he ends up actually taking in this sort of refugee woman who is pregnant with this crime lord's baby, and she wants out. So he tries to make that happen. And the first 2 episodes sort of act like a 2-hour movie, like a movie pilot for a show. Like, it's clearly not movie quality here, but it's definitely an interconnected, 2 episodes that sort of sets the whole premise of the show up, which I didn't realize. Like, I read what the show was about on Wikipedia as the first episode started, and I was like, well, I'm not getting this sense at all. And so to me, the Wikipedia description of this show is a spoiler, so I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about what ends up happening, because it doesn't happen until 35 minutes into episode 2. So I don't do spoilers here, so I'm not going to say anything about that, but I will say that he does get caught up with some of these, refugees and drug lords and that kind of thing, in his own way. So Michael Chiklis is great. I was too young to watch The Commish, and I did not have cable when The Shield was on, so I've never really caught, a lot of those shows. I've seen clips of The Shield, certainly, and I've seen him in other things, but Michael Chiklis is, a badass. He is, to me, the original Dean Norris. We see Dean Norris, who's the bald cop from Breaking Bad, the brother-in-law. We see him playing a cop in everything, and he's always menacing, and he's always cop-like. Well, Michael Chiklis did it first, and, I like Dean Norris, but for my money, Michael Chiklis, is sort of the king of that, and he shows no signs of slowing down here. He's great. He's easily the best part of the show. What are some not good parts of the show? Well, first of all, his character, just in a nutshell, is kind of not believable. The fact that he was a border agent for 32 years and doesn't speak hardly any Spanish. He can't even figure out how to order a beer in Mexico. That seems completely unrealistic. And he had a Spanish partner that died, before episode 1 started. But he's going down to cross the border and sort of pick up some things at his ex-partner's house and all this stuff. The partner was Spanish. Your partner's with somebody for 30 years. You're on the border patrol for 30 years. You don't speak any Spanish? It just seems completely unrealistic. So right away I'm like, well, that's kind of bogus. But and then look, some of the plots here are a little bit bogus as well. Some of the dialogue is a bit hackneyed. But one thing I do like about this show is that it takes us sort of on that journey of maybe having 2 sides to the story, because of course he is a very hard-nosed agent in that first episode, and he's like, oh, well, F all these people that are trying to get in, and I do my job to the letter, and this and that. And then, halfway through that episode, and certainly by the second episode, he's firmly, entrenched in trying to help this woman, who, really he's essentially breaking laws for, and we sort of learn, okay, well, maybe there is different sides to some stories, and maybe, people trying to break in the country are not all, horrible, and they're all criminals and all of this, and this is something that he sort of thought. I don't know. Is it too quick a turnaround for a character? That's certainly open for debate. The writing is not the strongest element of the show, but look, it did capture my attention. I thought some of the side characters were pretty solid. I think the action is pretty good because it's on CBS All Access. There's a little bit of cursing, not I think an over amount, but some. But there's also some violent deaths and some violent stuff that I don't think you'd see on CSI or some of the typical CBS procedurals. And this also doesn't seem like a procedural. It seems like this is going to be a long-term thread of a show, which I think also fits better for CBS All Access than on CBS television. So I think all of those things sort of combine to make some interesting things, and Chiklis is great in it. I do wish that they really did more with his family. Like, his family definitely plays into, the last part of the second episode, but the first episode we see that he's sort of looked upon as a deadbeat kind of dad, and he's estranged from his wife and his daughter, but he shows up to her high school graduation party, and it's fine. Everybody wants him there. There's no scene, but they're just because there was no scene, there wasn't much of anything. It just, nothing happened. He showed up, everybody was happy to see him, and the end, So I think they need to kind of work on the family element of it a little bit. So look, the show is clunky. I think it's got a ways to go to become one of the great cable dramas here, or streaming dramas, as the case may be. But I do think there's some potential here as well. And much like Ted Danson, look, Chiklis only gives 100% in everything that he does, and he's great here. I mean, he's the reason to watch this, but I think the story might allow you to stick with it. I just wish some of it wasn't so unbelievable, if they're trying to make a real-world type show. So I'm going to leave Coyote for now with a B-. I do think I'm going to wrap up this season, though. If it really is only the 6 episodes, I feel like I'll watch the rest of them. So speaking of 6 episodes, I watched the entire series of this because they're only 20 minutes each, so the whole series takes you 2 hours. And it is on Netflix, History of Swear Words. I think when a lot of people heard about this, they were hoping Samuel L. Jackson might host it, as it is a documentary series, but no. But one of the other great sort of hammy movie actors, Nicolas Cage, is the host. And look, I talk a lot of crap on Nick Cage. I do think he is a terrible over actor in many situations. I think action movies are not his forte. However, I've always said I think he does dramas well, and I actually think he can be funny. He's a horrible action star, though, and that's sort of the path that he fell into to make a lot of money. But so this takes us through 6 episodes, each one focusing on a different swear word. So you've got, and I don't really swear on this channel too much, but you've got the F word, you've got the S word, you've got bitch, you've got the 2, one male genitalia, one female genitalia, and then finally we end with damn. So those are all the 6 episodes, and it's a lot like, when VH1 used to do all those talking heads shows like I Love the 90s and Best Week Ever. It's in that vein. So we see a lot of talking heads discussing the words and the origins and, how they use it in their lives and what they think of when they hear the word and this, that, and the other thing. And you've got Nick Cage, sort of sprinkled throughout, kind of giving us extra information or trying to do some comedy bit or whatever. And comedy bit, not like a sketch, but just sort of, doing a couple of jokes or whatever between serious people, because you do have actually a few experts that they've recruited for this series. You've got Corey Stamper, who is the author of a book called Word by Word, The Secret Life of Dictionaries, and she's a lexicographer. You've got... who else? You've got Melissa Moore, who is an author of a book called Holy S, A Brief History of Swearing. You've got Ben Bergen, professor of cognitive science, and a bunch of other people. Anne Hudley, who's a linguist and a professor as well. in Santa Monica. So you've got a whole host of both celebrities, and they're, most of them are not going to be your A-listers. This part, really reminded me of Best Week Ever, and I love the 90s and stuff. Nick Cage is by far the biggest star you'll see on this show. Everybody else, I mean, Sarah Silverman, she's pretty big, but, like Jim Jeffries and Nikki Glazer and, Joel Kim Booster and Jim Jeffries and people that maybe you've heard of or seen pop up or that have a Netflix stand-up special or whatever that have been recruited for this. But for the most part, they're all pretty funny. Now, there's a great documentary that came out maybe 10 years ago called F, a documentary. It says the whole word. By the way, Snowball, my cat, has joined us for the last part. Sometimes he gets tired of me talking, so he just jumps on a counter or something so y'all can see him. So shift the camera a little bit. There you go. You can see him a little more. Anyway, so there's a documentary called F, a documentary that came out about 10 years ago, and it was sort of in a similar vein. It was kind of like a talking head type of thing. And I learned a lot from that documentary. They explored the history of the word, its use in movies, its use in pop culture, and that's really what this show does as well, in a watered down version. And I say watered down because each episode is only 20 minutes long, so they really discuss each word and then kind of move on. There's a few parts that they will discuss cursing as a whole when they're talking about one specific word, but for the most part it's about those words. I certainly learned a good bit from this show. I learned about the origins of a lot of these words. Now I knew all about the F word from that documentary, but the other words, I really didn't know where a lot of it came from. And I actually thought the most interesting episode probably was the damn episode, because, of course, today we don't think of that as a curse, really. Now, goddamn, yeah, that's kind of a curse, but we don't really think of just damn. And so this show explored the origins of, it happening and when it was considered as such and why. And the most interesting thing I got out of that was, of all the words they went over, damn is the only one that really hasn't changed meaning at all. It was always sort of a curse word, and it was always about, damn you to hell kind of a concept, whereas some of these other words have had a lot of different meanings, especially the F word and the S word, have really run the gamut. So I thought it was very interesting, some interesting tidbits here. My biggest complaint about it is, unfortunately, Nick Cage and the sort of, jokey bits that he does in between the talking heads. I could have left him out completely or had somebody else in it, and I don't necessarily blame him completely. I think it's the script just wasn't that good. Those are, I think, the only scripted parts of the whole thing. Everything else is sort of the people giving their own, history with the word or whatever. And Nick Cage's parts were all sort of scripted, and as a result, I didn't think that great. He's an okay host. He was a serviceable host, but I didn't think his parts were that great. So, but overall, I really did enjoy this show. I think it was very interesting. I learned a lot from it, which I think is what a documentary should do. I definitely don't think it's as funny or as clever as it thinks it is. I think it's a better educational tool than it is a comedy show, which is a little bit, where Netflix is putting it, because right from the start, the opening credits right away say, something about a Netflix comedy series or a Netflix comedy special or something. And so you're expecting to laugh your butt off. And yeah, I laughed a few times, but more, it was educational, I thought, so I think it's a little bit at odds with itself there, but I enjoyed it. I leave History of Swearing with a B. So that will do it for the show. I fell a bit behind last year. By the end, I had only done like 49 or 50 episodes, and I really want to get one every single week out, so we're starting out strong here. It's only the 12th, and I've already gotten 2 of these up. So I know there's a few more shows premiering within the next few days, and of course, Netflix and some of the streamers always have shows, dropping, so there's already a couple on Netflix that I haven't gotten to yet, so we'll talk about that. I'm excited about the Punky Brewster revival in a few weeks, and ABC has a new series called something about Midlife, Call Your Mother, is it called, with Kira Sedgwick. They've been promoting the heck out of that, so definitely a few new things to talk about on the next episode. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Please comment below, too. What did you think of these shows? What do you think of Nick Cage, too? He's a very polarizing character. I'm curious. So anyway, that will do it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye.